Hello everyone, welcome to MzansiOz Diary. My name is Connie. If you're new here, you're very much welcome. So today's topic is Nandi Life Sciences the next Theranos? So what happened when the biotech has no public data, no clients, and one of its founders is also leading a royal charities in crisis, aka Sentebale. Sounds familiar? Let's talk about Nandi Life Sciences and why it's drawing uncomfortable comparison to Theranos.
My name is Dr. Sophie Chandauka, and I live in Houston, Texas. Something that people wouldn't know about me is that before I went down a medical research and medical career, I actually studied architecture, and I use that creative side of me every day, sometimes even more than I would use the medical side.
In 2023, Dr. Sophie Chandauka and her brother Nandi Chandauka co-founded Nandi Life Sciences. Nandi Life Sciences is a biotech firm based in Houston, Texas. It aims to develop a treatment for rare cancers and autoimmune diseases. The company is part of the Texas Medical Center Accelerators and was even voted one of the most promising early-stage life science startups. But there's a catch. Actually, several. Let's look at them. The red flags. Let's go down the checklist. First, Nandi has no public clinical trial data, no peer review research, no paying clients. Its only known partner is TMAB Therapeutics, also linked to Dr. Nandi Chandauka. That is what we call closed-loop credibility. Meanwhile, Dr. Sophie Chandauka was appointed chair of Sentebale, Prince Harry's charity, around the same time. In July 2023, the Nandi Life Sciences was registered in March 2023. Within months, in less than 2 years, the entire board resigned, including both royal patronage, namely Prince Harry and Prince Aso. The UK Charity Commission is now investigating. So we have a biotech startup tied to a troubled charity with all its validation coming from inside the house. The Theranos echo. If that sounds familiar, it should. Theranos, the billion-dollar blood testing scam, was built on bias, secrecy, and connections.
Elizabeth Holmes was just 19 years old when she dropped out of Stanford University with a dream of creating a company that would revolutionize blood testing.
Our work is in being able to make testing more accessible.
They did nothing to verify that her scientific plans were true.
I felt like she was deceiving the public.
You're lying to doctors, you're lying to regulators, you're also lying to the public. Most people would call that fraud as well.
Elizabeth Holmes had the board full of former generals and secretaries of state, but no science to back her tech. Nandi hasn't gone that far. There is no fraud allegation yet, but the structural red flags are eerily similar. There's vague data, overlapping leadership, and high-profile optics. So let's have a look at the comparison between Nandi Life Sciences versus Theranos. Now, the key issue is to look at industry focus, where both startup are focused on. The Nandi Life Sciences focuses on rare diseases, cancer, autoimmune disease as a biotech, the Theranos was looking at the medical devices into specifically in blood diagnostic. So that is all around health tech industry. So now the second thing checklist to look at the founders, the background of the founders. Dr. Sophie Chandauka, the background is corporate law, and Dr. Tinachi Chandauka, the background in this case is the biotech investing. Okay, so with Theranos, Elizabeth Holmes had no scientific degree, so it's a red flag. The third one is the scientific validation. With the Nandi Life Sciences, there's no public peer-reviewed data or clinical trial results. Similarly, with that Theranos, there were no validation. The technology, that blood test was not validated independently. So there was no peer reviewed of it being of any value, of any benefit than available blood tests on the market. Okay, now, so we've looked at that. That is the fourth thing we look at is the key partners, the partners. Now, the TMAB Therapeutics, it's partnered with the Nandi Life Sciences, but this TMAB Therapeutics is linked, it's a linked entity. So it's not independent because it was founded by the Dr. Nandi Chandauka, Sophie's brother, and is also linked to Texas Medical Center. Right, so the Theranos, it was linked to Walgreens Retail, Safeway, which was cancelled, and Army was also minimal link at the time. But we know that, Walgreens subsequently raised some concern, and that's why she was charged. All right, so this is for you to look at how you would evaluate this startup yourself. Now, the key part is, so we looked at those key part. Now we're going to look at the client's revenue. So have they received any revenue from their programs or clients? With the Nandi Life Sciences, there's no public clients or revenue streams. This is Sophie Chandauka's company, Nandi Life Sciences. So the website is no longer available, but this profile of the company was updated in the website to look at the company. So we know that this company is actually unfunded company. It has not been funded. You see that word? Say Nandi Life Sciences is an unfunded company. So the website no longer available, but I was able to search and find the company profile, obviously, because now they've deleted their website and made it unavailable for people to look into this. But I've already looked into Nandi Life Sciences. I couldn't find any funding before, any company that actually invested in them, or any of the clients that I told you before that they didn't have any clients. So this looks like it's just a company they established that hasn't brought any client except for Sentebale, and act as a client for Sentebale, but Sentebale is a charity. It's not a client for these unfunded. This is because its registration for this company, it says that it operates as a developer of therapeutics for multiple disease. So Nandi Life Sciences has not raised any funding yet. It's got about 2,970 active competitors, including 1055 funded and 680 that have existed. So its top competitor includes this Moderna, Jazz Pharmaceutical, and Beijing. So as you can see, when it was funded in 2023. So that was before Sophie Chandauka started at, I don't know whether she founded, which month she founded this company, but it was founded in 2023. And with the Theranos, they claimed revenue through partnerships. And largely, they were non-functional, those partnerships they claimed revenue from. Okay? So with the transparency, we look at, again, the transparency of the startup using the example of Nandi Life Sciences and the Theranos, compare both. They limited public disclosure in the Nandi Life Sciences. Mostly, a lot of things in the Nandi Life Sciences are mostly internally links. And with the Theranos, they actively misled investors. And yes, the press, and also they also misled the regulators as well. Now we're going to look at the governance issues, very important. Sentebale board crisis by Dr. Sophie Chandauka, which is the charity conflicts of interest concerns as well, using staff from her company, the Nandi Life Sciences, paying them that amount to give them some advice about how to raise funds, and there were no funds raised, and the people were linked to her company. That is issue of governance issues. And then with the Theranos, there was a tight internal control and uninformed as well. So the other thing is regulatory scrutiny. With the Nandi Life Sciences, we don't know any regulatory scrutiny yet, none currently disclosed. We have noticed that the actual website is no longer available, but there are other links to it, notably the LinkedIn profile is still there, but when you click on the website is no longer available. I don't know what they're thinking. They're thinking probably by doing that they are deleting all the stuff, but you can't delete something that was once available online. So anyway, that's their problem. But also with the Theranos, we're linked to SEC. They had a lot of scrutiny by SEC, by CMS, by DOJ, and FDA investigations as well. Now, the second last thing is the public perception. The low profile, early stage. We know that the Nandi Life Sciences low profile. It's also early stage. And emerging scrutiny. There's emerging scrutiny around it, okay, as a result of the Sentebale crisis. Now, with the Theranos, there was a lot of global media scandals and also criminal conviction, as we've heard. Now, alleged deception. The alleged deception around Nandi Life Sciences is not proven, but there's a patterns that we're seeing raise early caution. And with the Theranos, we know there's a proven criminal fraud conviction. So the key similarity between the two biotechs that are up is that they lack this lack of independent validation. Both companies operated without transparency, also without any transparent scientific proof at early stages. And the founders control. So the leadership with little to no scientific publication records. The self-reinforcing credibility loops that I spoke about. The Theranos with bought on politics And with Nandi, we have with intralinked startup partnerships. They have intralinked startup partnership, and those intralinked startup partnership, they also linked to the Sentebale as consultants. There's huge amount, nearly £500,000 that was paid to those consultants. Those we've mentioned that some of those consultants were employed by the Nandi Life Sciences. That is what we call intralinked startup partnership. Okay, and the people that provide any validity to Nandi Sciences is actually a person that also co-own it. So these self-reinforcing credibility loops, you need to pay attention to that. Very important before you put your money into it. Now, the key differences that we have to mention here is that Theranos scaled very fast and deceived at massive level. Okay, they draw a lot of billions, and they also use US federal contracts as well. Now, Nandi is early stage, so there's not yet public facing on the same level as the Theranos, but the transparency gaps and leadership crossover, they create governance risk. So the issue around Nandi Science is this transparency gaps and leadership crossovers, which creates this governance risk, especially with Dr. Sophie Chandauka leading both a startup and a royal charity in crisis. So the breakdown of the risk types in early stage biotech startup, the risk distributions, over 2/3 of the risk distribution in the early stage biotech startup is the scientific risk, financial risk, and governance risk. Those accounts to about 2/3 of the risk. You need to know to identify it, and you need to know to check it. Hopefully this checkup would be able for you to learn whether you should actually buy shares in a company that has some kind of this type of investment and technology. Okay, so typically the biotech startup timeline, people may start a company, okay, and then when you start a company, they may progress into preclinical research. But preclinical research, you wouldn't have a lot of peer reviewed in that case. The seed funding is finding funding for what they find, so they can do a proper clinical trial, which will then begin. And then the data that they find, they then have to submit to FDA for review. And if the FDA is happy with what they produce, then it can enter the market. Okay, and then when it's entered the market, we're still going to have what we call post-marketing evaluation to look at the benefit in a real person using it, not just a very controlled in clinical trial, but in real people. So this is quite important that you guys pay attention to this biotech startup, because Theranos was another wake-up call for Silicon Valley's, and also shake up this industry, which is very important for research and sciences. So with the Nandi Life Sciences, when we look at Nandi Life Sciences, which is a company co-founded by Dr. Sophie Chandauka and her brother. So this is, and when we look at with other biotech benchmarking, so we really could not find anything that meets that benchmarkings around independent clients. There's no independent clients we could find. That typically the startup would have, the benchmarking would have independent clients, yes. The scientific publication, often most of the startup will have some form of publications, But with Nandi Life Sciences, I could not find any. There's none existed because I'm really good with the research. I've published some research, so I know where to look for, but could not find a single. There's none exist. Okay. Now the external partnership. There is yes, there is external partnership, but that one is linked to the co-founders of Nandi Life Sciences, notably her brother, who is also a co-founder of Nandi Life Sciences. So that also we could say no, it's not independent, it's not external because they're linked. Often with the typical startup, we need to find external partnership that are not linked. That will give you like a green light on that one. Yeah, we need to find that clinical trial data, and also it needs to be independently peer reviewed before it can actually go into the market. So sometimes some of them, depending on the product, that may not be, they may be reviewed later, and depending what intention is. If you're looking at rare diseases, and that can be, escalated very quickly, you may not see that. But it's not, I'm not saying that you should always have a peer reviewed for biotech startup, but it depends on the type of the biotech and how far they are in that trajectory of early research and findings. So it also depends what is the intent of that science to be useful in which population, and some of this may be not be that important depending on the circumstances. So that those are the kind of things you need to evaluate it on. The first three are really important. One, the peer review trials, it's maybe in progress, okay, but it's also very important because we need to know that it can be independently verified by the clinical trial data. That is actually, so that would tell us that really it is true. There is some proof of concept and the product meets all the regulatory standards that's required. So, again, just be careful, okay? That's all I'm saying. This is for educational purposes, to educate you all about the things we look for when you look at biotech.
Elizabeth Holmes was just 19 years old when she dropped out of Stanford University with a dream of creating a company that would revolutionize blood testing.
Our work is in being able to make testing more accessible.
They did nothing to verify that her scientific claims were true.
I felt like she was deceiving the public.
You're lying to doctors, you're lying to regulators, you're also lying to the public. Most people would call that fraud as well.
Theranos began as a startup of almost mythical proportions and goals in 2003.
It's just an incredible morality tale.
A woman once hailed as a Silicon Valley visionary is facing federal fraud charges tonight.
Theranos founder Elizabeth Holmes has now officially been indicted on federal wire fraud charges. The U.S. Attorney's Office accusing her of engaging...
Imagine building a company that everyone thought would change the world, but ended up being one of the biggest frauds in history. Theranos, the company started in 2003 by Stanford dropout Elizabeth Holmes, was just that. They fooled everyone, receiving over $600 million of funding in the process. What Theranos promised was a revolutionary blood analyzer that could run hundreds of tests just from a finger prick in the comfort of your own home. However, this story isn't one of great success or inspiration. This story is about deceit, fraud, manipulation, and a CEO who would stop at nothing to get her goal. This is the story of Theranos, a company once worth $9 billion, and the story of how it all came crashing down in one of the worst disasters in Silicon Valley history. What exactly was Theranos, and how did it go so horribly wrong?
And we'd like to see a world in which every person gets access to this type of basic testing.
Elizabeth Holmes had a vision that turned her into a billionaire, that she could create a machine that she called the Edison that could detect hundreds of diseases with just a few drops of blood. The pitch convinced some very important people.
This used to be the very plush and very expensive head offices of Theranos, and the great and the good came here. Even Joe Biden, when he was vice president, came to California and heaped praise on the company. Success seemed inevitable.
Well, this is my certificate for Theranos showing my shares, and it was actually signed by Elizabeth Holmes. A sad bit of history, but history nevertheless.
Eileen LaPera was a secretary in Silicon Valley. She heard about this amazing new company.
My boss had indicated that it was going to be, in his words, the next Apple, and that I should get as many shares as I could. And so I did. It was 6 figures, which was a large amount for me.
Theranos went bankrupt following a series of reports in the Wall Street Journal questioning the accuracy of its tests as well as its business practices.
What Eileen didn't know was that the dream Elizabeth Holmes was selling was a nightmare. The technology didn't work, but investors like Eileen had no idea.
Elizabeth was in stealth mode, so that we had no idea whether it was going well or was on the brink of collapse.
The retail giant Walgreens had a contract with Theranos to diagnose patients with its machines. However, the court heard that Theranos wasn't using its Edison machines, but was instead using openly available diagnostic equipment. The court also heard that some patients had been misdiagnosed.
I just really resent that somebody would make such a massive fraud, especially when so many people told her, this isn't working.
Elizabeth Holmes has argued at trial that she had always attempted to create a genuine product that worked, and that she never intended to commit fraud.
So startups like Nandi Life Sciences, they operate in a space where transparency matters. Investors, patients, and the public deserve to know everything. So we need to know if this is real science, first of all, and we need to know who validated this science and whether independent. And is also, which we need to know, is anyone else watching the gate, the regulator, and all of that. So with the early stage biotech, the danger isn't always criminal intent, but sometimes, as we've seen with the example of the Theranos, Elizabeth Holmes, it's also can be ambition without accountability. And that also can be very damaging. Okay, so the question is to all of you, is Nandi Life Science another Theranos in the making? The answer to this would be only time will tell. But the early signs demand that we pay close attention and close scrutiny, not just the headlines. So drop your thoughts in the comment section. So, and if you want more deep dives like this one, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.